This video will cover the topic Multiplicative Property of Equality with Signed Fractions.
What is the multiplicative property of equality, and how does it help us?
Sometimes, a variable that you want to solve for is being multiplied by a negative fraction. The multiplicative property of equality states that if you multiply both sides of an expression by the same thing, that equality will hold.
I don't know, that doesn't really sound right.
Let's try testing it. Let's take the equation 6 equals 6. Let's see what would happen if we multiply both sides by a negative 2.
Well, if we simplify both sides, we end up with negative 12 equals negative 12, so I guess it does work.
Now, in terms of variables and fractions, it is important to remember how to negate a fraction. If you want to solve for x, but have an expression in the form negative a over bx equals c, we need to use the multiplicative property of equality. First, it can be useful to rewrite this expression as negative 1 times in parentheses a over bx equals c. Now see that we need to get rid of both the negative 1 and the a over b in order to get x by itself. In order to get rid of the negative 1, we multiply both sides of the equality by negative 1. This gives us negative 1 times a over bx equals negative 1 times c. This simplifies down to a over bx equals negative c. Now we need to get rid of the a over b. We can do this by multiplying by the multiplicative inverse because a number multiplied by its multiplicative inverse is 1. We can compute the multiplicative inverse of a fraction by switching the numerator and the denominator. So the inverse of a over b is b over a. So what we're going to want to do is to multiply both sides of the equation by b over a. When we do this, we get b over a times a over b x equals negative c times b over a. When we simplify this, the b over a times a over b simplifies down to 1, and so we get the final equation, x equals negative c times b over a, and that's our final solution for x.
That had a lot of letters in it. Could we do an example with real numbers?
Sure, let's try this one. Evaluate negative 2 over 3x equals 4.
We want to take out the negative first, right?
Right. We can do this by multiplying both sides by a negative 1. We get negative 1 times negative 2/3 x equals 4 times a negative 1, which we can simplify down to 2/3 x equals negative 4. Next, we're going to want to get rid of the fraction. We can do this by multiplying by the multiplicative inverse of 2/3, which in this case is 3/2. So we multiply both sides of the equation by 3/2. We get 3/2 times 2/3 x equals negative 4 times 3/2. The 3/2 and the 2/3 cancel on the left side in order to equal 1, and so our final expression becomes x equals negative 4 times 3/2, which equals negative 6. And so our final solution is x equals negative 6.
So to solve for x when it's multiplied by a negative fraction, we have to first multiply both sides by negative 1, and then multiply both sides by the multiplicative inverse of the fraction.
Exactly.